Okay, so this is pretty cool. Late last year, someone messaged me on one of the fishing forums and said that he's a writer for the Fisherman magazine and that he's interested in doing an article on crankbait porgies after seeing one of my videos. So here it is in print. It's in the September Fisherman magazine issue, and that's the author, Paul Stowe. And I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel on the upper right hand corner. And he did an amazing job explaining all the tackle, all the techniques, and that's pretty funny. They put in some stock photos. Jumbo porgies are suckers for crankbaits. Those guys were not using crankbaits. Okay, so here I'm using a Rapala Rippin wrap. It's an 06 size, and I'm mainly targeting fluke. Now, since my Kitech fluking experiment, I've been trying to find a hard bait or a category of hard bait that can consistently catch fluke. And so far the results pretty spotty. I think they definitely work. I have caught fluke on them before, but nothing consistent. So that to me is sort of the holy grail of fluking, or for any kind of fishing. If I can reduce everything down to some sort of crankbait or hard body jig, I think that, gulp is messy, soft plastics get torn up, and honestly, I think it creates a lot of waste. Especially in freshwater, I don't hear people talk about this, but I've opened up lake trout that has Senkos and other soft plastics stuck in their stomach, and I'm sure that happens to bass as well. So anyway, the whole category of lipless crankbaits alone is huge. Every brand has their own unique action, vibration, fall rate. The Rippin wrap falls on slack line in sort of a random spiral. It actually swims. It doesn't shimmy side to side like the striking red eye shad, but it has a really nice swimming action on the fall. It's also very slim in profile, so it gets down pretty deep. It has a very fast startup flutter, and you can do very short pumps of the rod tip. It's just a great yo-yoing lipless crankbait. And here I'm going to give it a particularly high lift, and on the drop something pretty nice grabs it. So the rod I'm using is the 7'2" Shimano X Pride medium light, and I have that paired to my Corrado 70. And it's a pretty light combo, and I wasn't expecting to catch anything of size. Frankly, I thought this was a bluefish until pretty late in the fight. Decent. Alright, so that's my first non-schoolie bass of the year, and the water is pretty warm. It's about 75 degrees, and I'm trying to move as quickly as I can to get this fish back in the water. Also trying not to hook myself with the 2 single hooks. And yes, I definitely replace all the hardware on the Rippin wraps. So here I'm just kind of taking my time reviving this fish, and I think it's a pretty clean release. She was out of the water for maybe a minute, and once you see the fins start flaring, they start struggling, that's when you know they're ready to go. Alright, so I stayed in that area for another half an hour or so, could not raise another bass, and here I'm porgy fishing. Very shallow water. At low tide, all these boulders are pretty much exposed. So I can imagine I'm throwing into 2 or 3 feet of water basically. And at this time of year, there's some pretty big porgy just pushing up onto these boulder fields at high tide. And as the tide retreats, they sort of pull back into slightly deeper water, but 15 feet is about as deep as you want to go anywhere in Long Island Sound, in my opinion, if you're targeting big porgies from kayak or small boats. And they're nice and dark. Most of these shallow porgies, they pick up this sort of dark pink metallic kind of coloration, which is pretty cool. Alright, so this next fish is probably the heaviest porgy I've caught this year yet. And I'm casting along this rocky point that again is completely exposed at low tide. So these porgies are roaming in 2, 3, 4 foot of water max. And it really is a lot of fun. You can go even lighter than the 2-inch slab rap. So this porgy, like a few of the biggest ones I've caught this year, no real runs, just a lot of bulldogging, and again you're using a number 2 single hook, so you really do have to fight these fish on a pretty light drag. Now I will say that this week, compared to earlier in the season, these porgies are really eating the bait. They're not just kind of slapping at it, they're actually eating it. And for the first time this year, I had to use my dehooker, and it's pretty fun. But yeah, this porgy looks, about 16.5 inches. But when I turn it, you'll see how fat he is, man. And I've stopped keeping porgy months ago. So everything is catch and release, and I'm not using any bait, I'm not using gulp. It's just a single crankbait, a single hook. Very clean fishing and a lot of fun. And here I'm just making another cast along this rocky ledge, and this one picked it up before it hit the bottom. And I actually felt that pickup. So this Phoenix rod, which I did a brief review on when I first got it, oh boy, pretty decent, pretty sensitive blank. The reel I'm using is a Daiwa Tatula 2000 size, and 8-pound Daiwa J braid to 8-pound Seaguar STS fluorocarbon. And sometimes I'll use 6-pound if I'm fishing deeper, but right now when they're so shallow, 8, 10, even 12-pound is fine. Earlier in the season when they're holding 25, even 30 feet, 6-pound is going to get the bait down there. Here's another one of these dark, fat porgies. That's how I like my porgies. dark, thick. And there you go. Now, again, water is pretty warm, so I'm not just chucking, especially after sort of a long fight on light line. I'm giving the fish just a little bit of an insurance that they're going to swim off. Even porgies, it doesn't really matter what type of fish. If you're going to release them, try to give them the best chance. And here is the only fluke I catch that day, and I've caught a lot of 17, 18, even barely keeper fluke, 19 inches. But if you watch closely, here you actually see the fluke come up and grab the slab rap. And again, I'm fishing maybe 5-6 feet of water, so that fluke came up almost to the surface, and you saw that flash of white. And there's definitely a lot of bait in the water. And Paul, who wrote the Porgy Crankbait article, he has another article in the September issue of The Fisherman that he talks about that late season shallow harbor bite. And absolutely, the fluke, in the heat of summer, they're pretty deep, but they're going to push back in shallow at the end of the season when all the bays and harbors and flats are loaded with bait fish. And this is one of them. Oh, very fail. So again, this is one of several I've caught this year, last year on the slab rap, all around this size. And that's why I'm trying to use larger lipless crankbaits, trying to target larger fluke. And so far, hasn't happened, but I'm going to keep at it because I find it very fun. It's an interesting little project, and there's plenty of gulp jigging videos for fluke online. So yeah, alright, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and my cousin had a pretty nice day from shore, so stay tuned for that video.